Gumball isn't always goofy fun. Sometimes it rips your heart out. Today, we're counting down the 10 saddest episodes that emotionally destroyed us, from heartbreaking betrayals to powerful lessons on love and loss.
I'm
sorry, they're in the
What do you mean? Put in the bitch now!
I'm afraid the
Stay until the end, because the number 10 pick might just wreck you all over again. Episode number 1, The Origins. Part 2. If Part 1 was heartbreaking, The Origins Part 2 is utterly soul-crushing. After being flushed away, Darwin refuses to give up. Driven by his love for Gumball, he literally evolves, growing lungs, sprouting legs, and crawling across land just to return home. All the while he sings, "I'm on my way," a hauntingly beautiful song about hope, loneliness, and determination. His journey is both absurd and profoundly moving, showing just how far love can push someone to grow. Meanwhile, Gumball can't accept that Darwin is gone. Everyone tells him to move on, but deep down he knows his friend will come back. When the two finally reunite, it's not just a touching scene, it's the emotional foundation of the entire series. Darwin isn't just a pet anymore. He's family, a brother, and proof that love can defy even nature itself. Episode number 2, The Origins. Part 1. This is where Darwin's backstory finally unfolds, and it's nothing short of heartbreaking. Gumball, notorious for accidentally killing his pet fish one after another, is given one last chance when Richard brings home a new goldfish. That goldfish is Darwin. But Darwin is different. He watches, he learns, he loves. Slowly, he begins to mimic Gumball, developing quirks and emotions that no ordinary fish should have. Then, in one cruel accident, Nicole and Richard flush him down the toilet after he starts to speak, mistaking him for a nightmare. The image of Darwin disappearing into the pipes, confused and scared, is devastating. For Gumball, it's not just losing a pet, it's losing a best friend he didn't even know he had yet. This episode transforms Darwin from comic relief into something deeper, a soul, a survivor, and ultimately, family. Episode number 3, The Choices. The Choices is one of Gumball's most introspective and mature episodes. Nicole, overwhelmed by her chaotic life, starts to wonder what if she had chosen differently. We watch her slip into alternate realities, imagining herself rich, powerful, famous, but also lonely, bitter, or unfulfilled. In one version, she marries someone else and is miserable. In another, she ends up dead, a chilling reminder that not all paths lead to happiness. Each scenario is polished on the outside but hollow at the core, lacking the one thing that gives her life meaning: love. When Nicole finally reflects on her real life with Richard and the kids, the mess, the stress, the laughter, she realizes that chaos is worth enduring when it comes with unconditional love. The montage of her family together is both heartbreaking and uplifting, reminding us that the perfect choice isn't always the one that looks best on paper, but the one that fills your heart. Episode number 4, The Parents. If you've ever wondered why Nicole Watterson burns with such relentless intensity, The Parents provides the devastating answer. Until this episode, Nicole's strictness, her perfectionism, and her volcanic stress seemed like quirks of personality, traits played for comedy or the occasional dramatic twist. But then, for the first time, we meet her mother and father, and suddenly all of those traits are redefined in the harshest possible light. Nicole's parents are not nurturing. They're not even neutral. They're ice-cold, hypercritical figures who treat their daughter less like family and more like a failed project. From the very moment she was born, they branded her with suffocating expectations, naming her Dr. Nicole at birth, as if her entire identity was nothing more than a resume waiting to happen. Her life was scripted before it even began, leaving no room for mistakes, no space for softness, no chance to just be. Every interaction with them drips with cruelty disguised as civility. At the family lunch table, the camera doesn't show warmth or reunion. It shows a battlefield. Where another parent might have offered encouragement, hers offer mockery. Where love should have been, there is only passive-aggressive dismissal. Nicole presents her accomplishments, and instead of pride, she receives cutting remarks that reduce her efforts to dust. Her every triumph is minimized, her every flaw magnified, until all that remains is the crushing silence of disapproval. And in that silence, the audience suddenly understands. The puzzle pieces of Nicole's character click together with painful clarity. Her relentless drive, born from the desperate need to finally earn a nod of approval.
He's been disappointed in me.
Only because we loved you.
No, because you always had insane expectations for me. Like how you made me wear those ridiculous clothes my whole life.
In life, you
Her perfectionism, the armor of someone who knows one misstep will be weaponized against her. Her volcanic temper and her constant stress, the scars of years spent trying to carry impossible standards without breaking. The Parents doesn't just flesh out Nicole's backstory, it rewrites everything we thought we knew about her. Nicole isn't strict with Gumball and Darwin because she enjoys being the mean mom. She isn't obsessed with discipline because she's cold. She is still fighting a war that began in her childhood, replaying the rejection and neglect she grew up with, trying in vain to prove, to herself, to her children, and maybe still to her parents, that she is worthy of love. The result is one of the most raw and unforgettable episodes in the amazing world of Gumball. It reframes Nicole not as a caricature of strictness, but as a deeply wounded human being, carrying battles no one else can see. For once, the comedy peels back to reveal tragedy. The tragedy of a daughter who became extraordinary not because she was nurtured, but because she was starved of love. And in that revelation, Nicole becomes more than just a character. She becomes a mirror for anyone who has ever felt they had to earn affection from the very people who should have given it freely. It's heartbreaking, it's raw, and it lingers long after the episode ends. Episode number 5, The Shell. Penny has always existed in the background as the timid peanut with a literal shell, a character defined more by what she hides than what she shows. But in this episode, that metaphor becomes heartbreakingly real. When Gumball accidentally cracks her shell, it's not just a physical reveal, it's an emotional unmasking years in the making. Out emerges Penny's true form, a radiant, shape-shifting fairy whose body responds to her feelings with startling intensity. At first, her transformation is mesmerizing, a dazzling spectacle of light and possibility. But the beauty quickly unravels as her emotions take control. Fear twists her into a monstrous beast, grotesque and unrecognizable, as if her own insecurities have taken physical form. Vulnerability shrinks her into fragile, trembling shapes that look like they might shatter at the slightest touch. Every flicker, every change, speaks to the internal struggle of someone who believes that authenticity is dangerous, that if others see the real her, they will recoil in disgust or pity. The more she transforms, the deeper her conviction grows that no one, not even Gumball, could ever love her for what she truly is. It's here that the series abandons comedy for raw vulnerability. Gumball doesn't chase after her with his usual arsenal of jokes or over-the-top antics. Instead, he reaches out with something far rarer, pure honesty. His words, "That's not what you are, it's just how you feel," land like an anchor in the storm. It's a line that resonates far beyond the cartoon, echoing the experiences of anyone who has ever hidden behind a mask, terrified of rejection, convinced that their worst moments define them. What makes the moment unforgettable is that Gumball doesn't try to fix Penny or stop her transformations. He accepts them. He sees her beauty and her chaos, her light and her darkness, and embraces it all. That acceptance becomes the turning point, not just for Penny, but for the show itself. In a series known for absurdity and satire, this scene shines with unfiltered sincerity, delivering one of the most profound messages in the amazing world of Gumball. That love is not about perfection or stability. It's about being fully seen, with all the mess and fear and wonder that makes us human, and still being chosen. Penny's cracked shell, once a symbol of fear, becomes instead a metaphor for liberation. By breaking, it allows her to step into her full, messy, dazzling self, and by loving her in every form, whether radiant fairy or raging monster, Gumball proves that true love is not about controlling or hiding who we are, but about embracing it, chaos and all. Episode number 6, The Hero. Richard is almost always the series' punchline. The lazy, gluttonous, irresponsible dad who'd rather watch TV or eat donuts than do anything remotely useful. For most of the amazing world of Gumball, he's a walking disaster, defined by immaturity and absurdity. But the hero rips away that mask of silliness and reminds us of something essential. Beneath the buffoonery is a father with a fragile heart and a desperate need to be loved by his children. The episode begins with what seems like harmless teasing. Gumball and Darwin, embarrassed by their dad's antics, start mocking him at school. They laugh about his failures, about how he never accomplishes anything, about how useless he is compared to real dads.
Here's that now! He can stop me from that control box!
I'm coming to save you!
Here we go. We're doomed.
Don't worry! Have some...
But then Richard overhears them, and for once the joke doesn't bounce off his thick skin. His goofy grin collapses. The light in his eyes dims. In that instant, the eternal clown is stripped bare, and we see not incompetence, but heartbreak. For Richard, whose identity as a father is already shaky, his son's ridicule lands like a devastating betrayal. Nicole, furious, punishes the boys, but punishment isn't enough. The guilt festers inside Gumball and Darwin, gnawing at them until they can no longer ignore it. They realize that beneath all his flaws, their dad has always been there for them in the only way he knows how. And so they make a decision. They will give Richard a chance to feel like the hero he has always wanted to be. Their plan, of course, is absurdly dangerous. They stage a crisis in a junkyard, setting up a scenario where Richard must swoop in to save them. It's reckless, chaotic, and entirely in character for the Wattersons. But the intent is pure. They want to rewrite the story, to undo the harm their words caused by proving that, to them, their father is more than a punchline. When the moment arrives, Richard predictably stumbles. He fumbles every step of the way, panicking, tripping, making everything worse before it gets better. But beneath the chaos lies something that has always defined him: love. Clumsy, reckless, unconditional love. And it's that love, not skill, not intelligence, not competence, that pushes him through. Against all odds, with a little help from cartoon logic and a touch of plot armor, Richard rescues his children. The climax of the episode seals its emotional weight with a flashback. We see toddler Gumball running joyfully into Richard's arms, his face lit up with pure, unshakable trust. That memory reframes everything. To Gumball and Darwin, their dad was once larger than life, the first and truest hero they ever knew. And in that moment, as past and present collide, the silliness fades into something profoundly human. Richard will never be the perfect father. He'll never be reliable in the traditional sense, or wise, or disciplined. But the hero reminds us that fatherhood isn't measured by competence, it's measured by love. Richard is chaotic, foolish, and often an outright liability, but his devotion to his kids is absolute. It's messy and clumsy, yes, but it's also beautiful in its own way. And perhaps that's why this episode hits so hard. It dares to strip away the laughter and show the raw pain of a parent who just wants to be enough. It reveals the uncomfortable truth that even the goofiest, most flawed dads can be heroes, not because they're perfect, but because they never stop loving. Episode number 7, The Roots. Darwin, usually the beacon of joy and innocence, faces something far darker in this episode: an identity crisis. It begins with a small, seemingly harmless moment. While passing a pet store, Darwin gazes at the fish in their tanks. His eyes reveal a quiet melancholy, the look of someone silently wondering if he truly belongs where he is. Nicole, seeing this, interprets it in the worst possible way. She becomes convinced that Darwin feels out of place, that deep down he longs to return to what she believes is his real home: the water. And here lies the tragedy. What begins as a simple misunderstanding slowly transforms into a devastating portrait of how even the sincerest love can wound when it fails to truly listen. The Wattersons, desperate to make Darwin happy, launch into a series of absurd and cruel attempts. They feed him worms as if they were delicacies. They dangle hooks in front of his mouth, treating him like a wild fish. Eventually, they go so far as to stage a return to the pond, convinced that the only way to love him is to give him back to nature. On the surface, these moments carry the trademark comedy of Gumball, but underneath the laughter lies something heartbreaking. A child being treated as if he doesn't belong, as if the love and family he's built were somehow not real. And then comes the harshest blow, With complete seriousness, the family drives him to a pond and leaves him there. The car pulls away, and Darwin just stands at the water's edge.
You don't move a muscle until I say so, okay? Mom! Mommy! You gotta see this, Mom!
Ah!
Mommy! Mom! There's something you gotta see! Mom! Mommy! Mom, come on! You have to see this! It's amazing! Come on, Mom! You gotta see.
Small, broken, and utterly abandoned. His expression, blank and hollow, captures one of the most harrowing images in the entire series. The purest, kindest soul of Gumball being cast aside by the very people who should love him most. But in that moment of despair comes Darwin's most moving truth. He doesn't give up. He doesn't accept rejection. Instead, he runs after them. Not because he longs for a pond, not because he doubts his place, but because all he ever wanted from the beginning was something as simple as a cool fish tank he saw at the mall. That revelation turns the absurdity into tragedy. Darwin never questioned where he belonged, yet for a fleeting moment his family did. That fleeting betrayal cuts deep. It shows that real love isn't just about giving. It's about listening and truly understanding the people you care about. Darwin's unwavering loyalty, his decision to run after his family even after they left him behind, makes him shine brighter than ever. His small, fragile figure standing by the pond becomes one of the show's most haunting images, a child abandoned, yet still filled with hope. For viewers, the moment is unforgettable. The sting of injustice, the heartbreak of watching him so lost, and finally, the tearful relief when he runs back, not because he questioned his place, but because he never doubted where his true home was. The episode crystallizes Darwin's essence: pure love, undeserved pain, and an endless willingness to forgive, no matter how badly he's misunderstood. Episode number 8, The Weirdo. Susie has always been the embodiment of weird. Her very existence defies categories: a walking fish-like head with legs, a presence that feels both comic and unsettling. In most episodes, she's treated as the class oddball, the kid whose strange behavior is just a punchline. But in this particular story, the series dares to peel back the absurdity and explore the loneliness hidden beneath her strangeness. The episode begins with Susie offering gifts, quirky, nonsensical tokens of affection, a handful of mayonnaise, a torn $100 bill, objects that make no sense as presents, but to her, they're offerings of friendship, attempts to connect. Instead of gratitude, she's met with dismissal. Her classmates throw her gifts away without hesitation, and in that instant, her expression says it all. The kind of silent rejection that cuts deeper than words. Her weirdness, which for her is just being herself, is treated as something disposable. Gumball, to his credit, tries to help. But Gumball's help is Gumball. He goes through a carousel of misguided solutions, makeovers, schemes to change her image, even the wild idea of poisoning the town's water supply so everyone will be just as weird as her. The comedy lands, but it's the kind that leaves a bitter aftertaste, because underneath the slapstick is a very real tragedy. The idea that someone has to completely transform or drag others down to their level just to belong. And so Susie takes the most heartbreaking step. She forces herself to act normal. She abandons her eccentricities, suppresses the essence of who she is, and for a moment it almost works. Her classmates accept her. She blends in. But the cost is staggering. She isn't happy, she isn't free, she's shattered on the inside. The message is subtle but devastating. Conformity can buy temporary acceptance, but at the expense of one's soul. Then comes the twist, the moment that changes everything. Susie gives Gumball and Darwin her eyes, literally. They put them on, and suddenly, they see the world as she does. The odd, nonsensical gifts, the bizarre behaviors, the perspective that made her seem alien. It all makes sense when filtered through her vision. In that instant, her so-called weirdness stops being absurdity and becomes authenticity. What seemed nonsensical was simply her way of existing, her unique lens on reality. The brilliance of this reveal is that it reframes weirdness, not as a flaw, but as a perspective. To Susie, mayonnaise isn't trash, it's generosity. A broken bill isn't nonsense, it's value salvaged from ruin. Everything has meaning when seen through her worldview. And that ultimately is the point. Strangeness is just another language, one that only feels alien until you take the time to learn it. What's most poignant is how universal this lesson feels.
Relax, sis. It's only a toy.
No, it's not.
Okay, we'll get it back.
Oh.
Everyone, at some point, has been sussy. The kid who tries to connect but fails. The friend whose attempts at kindness go unrecognized. The person who feels like their gifts, literal or metaphorical, are tossed aside as if worthless. The episode dares to show us that even the strangest offerings can be full of love if we're willing to shift perspective. And that is where Gumball and Darwin's journey mirrors ours as viewers. They don't just laugh at Sussy or pity her, they finally see her. They experience her reality, and in doing so, they validate her existence. Suddenly, she isn't the class freak, the background gag, the oddball no one takes seriously. She is someone with depth, with feelings, with a worldview as real as anyone else's. In the end, Sussy isn't just the weird kid. She becomes a mirror for the audience, reflecting a pain we all recognize. The loneliness of being misunderstood, the ache of rejection, and the fragile hope that one day someone will put on your eyes and finally understand. Her story isn't just about oddity, it's about empathy and the power of seeing the world through someone else's gaze. And that makes this one of Gumball's most quietly profound episodes, a reminder that sometimes the weirdest characters are the ones telling the most human truths. Episode number 9, The Father. Frankie's return to the Watterson household is unlike any other reunion episode in the amazing world of Gumball. It doesn't feel like family. It feels like an intrusion, the reappearance of a ghost who should have stayed buried in the past. Frankie isn't a warm presence or even a neutral one. He is a con artist through and through, a man who long ago traded responsibility for survival, sincerity for deception. Every word he speaks drips with the charm of someone who's always selling something, but underneath lies the menace of a father who never learned how to truly be one. For Richard, though, this chaos doesn't immediately read as danger, it reads as possibility. Richard has always been portrayed as childlike, naive, and perpetually goofy, but beneath that innocence is a wound, the absence of a father's love. When Frankie reappears, Richard latches onto him with heartbreaking eagerness, seeing not the flaws, but the potential. For a fleeting moment, he allows himself to believe he might finally receive what he has been denied his entire life: validation, protection, affection. That hope, however, is fragile. So fragile that when Richard realizes his family only invited Frankie back to mock him, it collapses like glass. The betrayal cuts deeper than most jokes in the series ever dare. In an instant, the clown mask slips, and we see Richard stripped bare. No pratfalls, no silly antics, just a grown man who has carried the ache of abandonment since childhood, suddenly confronted with it all over again. His goofy grin fades into a silence that feels heavier than any punchline. For once, the pain isn't something we laugh at, it's something we feel. Gumball and Darwin, who are used to fixing problems with wild schemes, can't stand to see their father broken. Their solution is as desperate as it is naive. If Frankie doesn't know how to be a dad, maybe they can force it out of him. So they orchestrate a series of bonding activities, hoping that somewhere in the chaos, Richard might get the father-son moment he's always dreamed of. But here lies the central tragedy. Frankie has no concept of bonding. For him, fatherhood is just another con, another performance. Instead of teaching values, he teaches shortcuts. Instead of offering safety, he leads them into danger. What should be a simple game of catch turns into stealing a football. What could have been a picnic becomes an armed robbery. A car ride spirals into a reckless chase. Every attempt at affection collapses into delinquency because Frankie can only express himself through the crooked lens of his criminal life. To him, survival is the only lesson worth passing on. And in that twisted logic, love becomes indistinguishable from lawlessness. At first, it plays as absurd comedy, the kind of over-the-top antics Gumball thrives on. But slowly, the absurdity fades, and what's left is devastating. The more Richard tries to connect, the clearer it becomes. Frankie doesn't know how to love. He never did. And Richard, despite his bumbling exterior, is revealed not as a fool, but as a son. Still yearning, still vulnerable, still chasing a hug from a man who can't give one.
Reports of strange occurrences all around Elmore. At Food and Stuff, it's been nighttime all day.
It's supposed to be noon.
Meanwhile, residents were...
Frankie's character works on two levels. On the surface, he's a cartoonish criminal played for laughs. But beneath that, he is a haunting reminder. Some parents are so broken that the only inheritance they leave is emptiness. They don't pass down love or wisdom, they pass down the scars of absence. By the end, the comedy is still there. The wild escapades, the exaggerated chaos, but it's reframed. Lurking beneath every gag is the tragedy of abandonment, of a family forced to laugh so they don't cry. And in that balance between absurdity and heartbreak, Gumball achieves something rare. It strips away the cartoon mask to reveal something raw, human, and painfully relatable. The hero may show Richard fumbling to save his sons, but the father shows us something even harder to watch. Richard as a boy trapped inside a man's body, still waiting for love that will never come. And that is perhaps the most tragic punchline of all. Episode number 10, The Heart. Gumball and Darwin's relationship with Mr. Robinson is one of the show's strangest, funniest, and ultimately most heartbreaking dynamics. To them, Robinson isn't just a grumpy old neighbor. He's a surrogate father figure they've sculpted in their own minds. They project onto him the kind of approval and admiration every child craves, believing that if they are loyal enough, helpful enough, and devoted enough, he will one day open his heart and accept them. What makes this devotion both hilarious and tragic is that Robinson never asked for it, never encouraged it, and never even understood it. He simply exists, and in their eyes, that's enough to make him a hero. But the illusion doesn't last. When the boys overhear Robinson dismissing them as two little meat gargoyles, the fantasy collapses in an instant. The phrase is cruel, almost absurd in its grotesqueness, but its sting is real. It reveals the truth. They were never protégés or beloved disciples, but nuisances he tolerated only because they amused or benefited him. For Gumball and Darwin, the betrayal is seismic. It's not just the loss of an idol, it's the death of a bond they thought was real. Robinson's clumsy attempts to patch things up are even more telling than his insult. Instead of genuine remorse, he falls back on grotesque, almost nightmarish solutions that expose just how malformed his understanding of love truly is. He tries Cold War-style brainwashing, as if loyalty could be manufactured in a lab. He offers gifts that are wildly inappropriate, proof that he has no idea what affection actually looks like. At one point, he even turns to threats, confusing obedience with care. These efforts are not just misguided. They're a devastating portrait of a man who has never learned to give or receive love in any healthy way. And then comes Rocky. Sweet, bumbling Rocky, who often seems too naive for his own good, becomes the unlikely catalyst. His suggestion is painfully simple: try kindness. For a brief moment, Robinson listens, but because he is so awkward, so utterly unskilled in the language of empathy, even his attempt at a compliment misfires. "You have huge hips," he tells Nicole, or in this case, offers a similarly clumsy remark. It's absurd, it's uncomfortable, and yet, it's oddly human. The humor lands, but beneath it there's a glimpse of sincerity, trying and failing to break through. For Gumball and Darwin, that half-hearted effort isn't enough. They crave closure, proof that the man they idolized is capable of feeling something real. And so, in one of the show's strangest and most haunting sequences, they force-feed him love, quite literally, until his hardened exterior cracks. A single tear falls. It's played as comedy, but in context it carries the weight of tragedy. That tear isn't victory. It's not reconciliation. It's a fleeting sign that even the most embittered heart still has the capacity to feel. The genius of the episode lies in that tension. On the surface, it's absurdist comedy about two kids harassing their cranky neighbor into loving them. But underneath, it's a reflection on parasocial bonds, on the dangers of idolizing someone who cannot reciprocate, and on the pain of investing unconditional devotion in someone emotionally unavailable. It forces us to ask, is love still love if it's demanded rather than given? Can kindness forced through desperation ever feel authentic? Ultimately, the story isn't about Robinson changing. It's about the boys learning that admiration without empathy is hollow, and that affection without reciprocity can feel indistinguishable from cruelty. At its heart, it's a meditation on the fragility of human bonds, how easy it is to break trust, and how devastating it is to love someone who simply doesn't know how to love you back. And those were the Gumball episodes that hit us harder than any Pixar movie. Which one broke you the most? Share it in the comments. Want to know? I'm not alone in this emotional chaos. If you want more deep dives and rankings, don't forget to hit subscribe and join me for the next breakdown.